Commander Du-hyun stood at the large window of Earth's diplomatic ship, the Culinary Heritage. His dark eyes watched the massive space station grow larger as they got closer. The station looked like a giant silver flower floating in space, with long petals that were actually docking arms for spaceships. "Commander, we'll dock in 10 minutes, said He-jun from his seat at the controls. The young engineer's fingers moved quickly over the glowing screens, making sure their approach was perfect. Do-hyun nodded, trying to stay calm. This was humanity's big moment, their first meeting with the Galactic Council. Everything had to go right. Earth's future depended on it. "Science Officer Jae-hyun, are you ready with your reports?" Do-hyun asked, turning to look at the woman working at her station. "Yes, Commander," Jae-hyun answered, not looking up from her screen. "I have all our scientific achievements organized just as they asked. Though I still think it's strange they wanted so much data about our food and farming." Do-hyun smiled a little. The Council's interest in human eating habits had seemed odd to everyone when they first made contact 6 months ago. The aliens had asked more questions about how humans digest food than about their spaceships or computers. The ship's doctor, Medical Officer Tati, walked onto the bridge. She was carrying her tablet with all the crew's health records. "Commander, I've reviewed everyone's health certificates again. The Council was very specific about wanting proof that we're all, what did they call it? Safely containing our digestive processes." She shook her head, confused by the strange request. A soft beep came from He-jun's controls. "We have permission to dock, Commander. They're sending us to Arm 7. The next 30 minutes were busy as the crew went through their docking procedures. Do-hyun watched his team work, feeling proud. They were the best Earth had to offer, smart, professional, and ready for anything. Or at least, he hoped they were ready. None of them could have prepared for what happened when they first met the aliens. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss. Do-hyun led his team onto the station, where 3 tall figures waited for them. The aliens were impressive, each nearly 7 feet tall, with smooth silver-blue skin and large, dark eyes. They wore flowing robes covered in complex patterns. "Welcome to Central Station," said the alien in the middle, bowing slightly. "I am Ambassador Vex of the Galactic Council. We are pleased to finally meet humans in person." Do-hyun bowed back, just as they had practiced. "Thank you for inviting us, Ambassador. I am Commander Do-hyun of Earth's diplomatic vessel Culinary Heritage. We are honored to be here." As Do-hyun introduced his team, he noticed the aliens kept looking at their stomachs with what seemed like concern. He had been warned this might happen. Apparently, most alien species found the human digestive system disturbing. The tour of the station started well. The aliens showed them amazing technology. Artificial gravity controls, faster-than-light drive systems, and energy shields. But things got strange when they reached the station's food center. "This is where all station residents receive their daily nutrition," Ambassador Vex explained, showing them a room full of simple machines. Each species has their own specialized nutrient processor that breaks down basic food elements into forms they can absorb. Jae-hyun stepped closer to one of the machines, curious. "Fascinating. So you don't eat solid food at all?" The 3 aliens made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Of course not," said one of Vex's assistants. "That would be extremely primitive. Advanced species have evolved beyond the need for complex digestive systems. We process our nutrients efficiently, without waste." Right then, He-jun's stomach growled loudly. The young engineer's face turned red as everyone looked at him. "I apologize," he said quickly. "We'd normally eat lunch around this time." The alien stepped back, looking alarmed. "You mean you need to consume substances right now?" Ambassador Vex asked, sounding worried. "We brought our own food," Tahi assured them quickly. "We can eat in our ship if it would make you more comfortable." The aliens whispered to each other for a moment. Finally, Ambassador Vex said, No. We are scientists. We should observe your eating process. For research purposes, of course. Please, use this private meeting room. The human team sat down at a table and took out their lunchboxes. Do-hyun noticed the aliens staying near the door, as far away as possible while still being able to watch. He tried to eat his sandwich slowly and neatly. Then it happened. Jae-hyun opened her container of kimchi, and the aliens gasped in horror. "What is D8?" one of them asked, pointing at the fermented vegetables. "It's kimchi," Jae-hyun explained. "Fermented cabbage with spices. Would you like to try some?" The aliens looked like they might faint. "Fermented? You mean you deliberately let bacteria grow in your food, and then you eat it?" Before anyone could answer, Do-hyun took a bite of his pickled jalapeno. The aliens made high-pitched sounds of distress. "Commander," Ambassador Vex shouted, "you just consumed a toxic capsaicin pod. We must get you to medical care immediately." Do-hyun quickly swallowed his bite. "It's fine, Ambassador. Humans can eat spicy food safely. In fact, many of us enjoy them." The aliens stared at them in silence for a long moment. Finally, Ambassador Vex spoke in a shaky voice. We must discuss this with the full council. Please finish your meal, and we will return shortly." As soon as the aliens left, Ho-jum turned to the others. "Well, that could have gone better." "Actually," said Jae-hyun thoughtfully, "I think this is fascinating. Their whole society seems to view complex digestive systems as primitive. But look at their technology. They don't have any food preservation methods beyond those nutrient processors. No fermentation, no pickling, no cooking." Tahi nodded excitedly. "You're right. Their simple digestive systems might be efficient, but they're also very limited. They can't break down complex molecules or use helpful bacteria like we can. That's not primitive, it's just a different path of evolution." Do-hyun listened to his crew's discussion while finishing his lunch. Maybe this wasn't a disaster after all. Maybe humanity's supposedly primitive digestive system would turn out to be more important than anyone expected. He just hoped the council would give them a chance to prove it. Looking out the meeting room window at the stars beyond the station, Do-hyun thought about all the centuries of human food culture, all the ways people had learned to preserve food, create new flavors, and work with natural processes instead of against them. The aliens might think humans were primitive now, but he had a feeling they were about to learn that primitive didn't always mean what they thought it meant. "Finish your lunches, everyone," he said to his crew. "Something tells me the rest of this diplomatic mission is going to be very interesting." As if to prove his point, they could hear excited alien voices in the hallway, probably discussing the shocking sight they had just witnessed. Humans happily eating their toxic and bacteria-filled food. The real challenge of convincing the Galactic Council that humanity deserved a place among the stars was just beginning. The meeting room felt very quiet after lunch. Commander Do-hyun and his crew waited for 2 hours while the Galactic Council discussed what they had seen. Everyone tried to stay busy. Jae-hyun reviewed her science reports. Ho-jum checked ship systems on his tablet, and Tahi organized medical records. But they all kept glancing at the door, wondering what the aliens would decide. Finally, Ambassador Vex returned with 5 other aliens. These new aliens wore different colored robes, marking them as council members. They all stood as far from the humans as possible, while still being in the same room. "We have reviewed your initial application to join the Galactic Alliance," one council member said. Her voice was high and musical, but she spoke firmly. "We have concerns." Do-hyun stood up straight and kept his voice calm. "What concerns you, honored council?" Another council member stepped forward. "Your species still uses an ancient digestive system. You consume raw materials and let bacteria grow in your food. How can you be advanced enough for the Alliance if you still eat like primitive creatures?" Ho-jum opened his mouth to argue, but Do-hyun gave him a quiet signal to wait. Arguments wouldn't help here. They needed to show, not tell. May I ask how your species handles long space journeys? Du Hyun asked politely. How do you keep your nutrient supplies fresh? The council members looked at each other. Ambassador Vex answered, we must return to station every 30 days to replenish our processed nutrients. They become unstable after that time. Interesting, said Jae-yun, typing notes on her tablet. And how do you handle food shortages or crop failures on your worlds? Ambassador Vex paused. We must maintain constant production. Our nutrients cannot be stored for long periods. Tahi stepped forward, holding up her medical tablet. Honored Council, what you see as primitive might actually be advanced. Our digestive systems are complex machines that can break down many types of food. We can store food for months or years using natural processes. We work with helpful bacteria instead of fighting against all microorganisms. The council members whispered to each other in their own language. The humans waited nervously. Finally, the first council member spoke again. You claim these primitive methods are advanced. Prove it to us. We challenge you to demonstrate how your eating habits could possibly benefit the Alliance. Do-hyun smiled. This was their chance. We accept your challenge. Give us 3 days to prepare, and we will show you everything. The council agreed, but they had conditions. The humans had to prepare their demonstration in a special laboratory where the aliens could watch safely through strong windows. They were worried about bacteria from human food spreading through the station. Back on their ship, the crew gathered to make plans. They're scared of our food, Hejun said, shaking his head. But they're also curious. Did you see how they kept watching even though they were disgusted? Fear often comes from not understanding, Tahi said. We need to show them the science behind our food. Show them it's not just random rot and bacteria, but carefully controlled processes. Jae-yun was already making lists on her tablet. We should focus on preservation methods first. Their biggest problem is storing nutrients for space travel. If we can show them how fermentation and pickling work. Good thinking, Do-hyun said. But we need more than just science. We need to show them the whole picture. He pressed a button on his communicator. Chef Sang-mai, please come to the bridge. A few minutes later, the ship's chef joined them. She had been brought on the mission specifically because she understood both the science and art of food preparation. Chef, we need your help, Do-hyun explained. We have 3 days to prove that human food science is advanced technology. Sang-mai listened as they explained the situation. Then she smiled. 3 days? I can work with that. But I'll need everyone's help. They spent hours making plans. Each crew member had a part to play. Hejun would build special display cases to show how preservation methods worked. Jae-yun would prepare scientific explanations of each process. Tahi would show the health benefits of different foods. And Sang-mai would create dishes that showed how humans had mastered biological processes. The next morning, they started work in the special laboratory. The council members watched through the windows as the humans set up their demonstration. Some aliens stayed all day, fascinated by what they saw. They watched Hejun build a traditional kimchi pot with temperature controls. They saw Jae-yun testing the acidity of different pickled foods. They observed Tahi culturing probiotic bacteria. And they stared in amazement as Sang-mai showed how different temperatures and conditions could create completely different foods from the same ingredients. Look at this, Jae-yun said on the second day, pointing to her microscope display. She was showing the council members how lactofermentation worked. These bacteria naturally preserve food by creating an environment where harmful bacteria can't grow. We've worked with these processes for thousands of years. The aliens were especially interested in cheese making. They had never seen anything like it. You mean you take this liquid animal product, one council member asked through the speaker system, and add specific bacteria and enzymes to transform it into a solid food that can last for years? Exactly, Sang-mai said proudly. Different bacteria and conditions create different flavors and textures. Some cheeses can age for decades and become more valuable with time. Hejun had been quiet most of the day, working on something in the corner. Finally, he called everyone over to see. "I've been analyzing your nutrient processors," he said to the watching aliens. "I think we can modify them to work with our preservation techniques. You could store nutrients for 10 times longer than you can now." That got their attention. The council members talked excitedly among themselves. Ambassador Vex's voice came through the speaker. "You believe you can improve our technology using your food processing methods. We can try right now," Hejun offered. "I can show you how it works." The council talked for a long time. Finally, they agreed to let Hejun test his idea, but only under strict safety protocols. While Hejun worked with the alien engineers, Commander Do-hyun watched proudly. His crew was doing more than just showing aliens how humans eat. They were showing how humanity had turned basic survival needs into science and art. That evening, back on their ship, everyone was tired but hopeful. "They're starting to understand," Tahi said. "Did you see how interested they were in the probiotic cultures? They never thought of bacteria as helpful before." "Tomorrow's the big day," Sangmai reminded them. "The final demonstration. Everything we've prepared will come together." Do-hyun looked at his crew, the scientist, the doctor, the engineer, and the chef. Each one had shown a different side of humanity's relationship with food. Together, they were changing how the Galactic Council saw their species. "Get some rest," he told them. "Tomorrow we show them everything. Tomorrow we prove that working with nature instead of against it isn't primitive. It's one of the most advanced things we can do." As the crew headed to their quarters, Do-hyun stayed on the bridge, looking out at the space station. Somewhere in there, the council was discussing everything they had seen in the past 2 days. Tomorrow would decide if humanity's primitive ways would keep them out of the Alliance or prove to be exactly what the Alliance needed. He smiled, remembering how horrified the aliens had been when they first saw humans eating lunch. Now they were fascinated by the same things that had disgusted them. Maybe that was the real lesson here, that progress doesn't always mean leaving old ways behind. Sometimes it means understanding them better. Tomorrow would show if the council could learn that lesson too. The morning of the final demonstration arrived with an unexpected announcement. The council had decided to move the event to their grand meeting chamber instead of the safety lab. After seeing 2 days of human food science, they were less worried about contamination. This was a huge step forward. Chef Sangmai had been up since early morning, preparing everything with her usual care. The other crew members helped her move dishes and display items to the meeting chamber. Each plate and bowl told part of humanity's food story. The chamber was impressive, with high ceilings and walls that seemed to shimmer with soft light. Curved rows of seats rose up like in an old theater, and at the center was a large presentation area. The humans set up their displays while more and more aliens arrived to watch. Commander Do-hyun noticed that the aliens sat much closer than they had 2 days ago. Some even leaned forward in their seats, trying to see better. Ambassador Vex sat with the council members in the front row. "Honored council members and guests," Do-hyun began, his voice clear in the quiet room. "Today we will show you how humanity's food science represents advanced biological engineering. Each dish here demonstrates a different way we work with natural processes to create something new." He stepped aside, and Tahi came forward with the first display. "This is cheese," she explained, showing different varieties. Each type is created by carefully controlling temperature, humidity, and bacterial cultures. The same ingredients become completely different foods depending on how we guide the natural processes. The aliens murmured with interest as she explained how different bacteria created different flavors. Some even used their devices to scan the cheeses, studying their complex molecular structures. Jae-yun presented next, showing how fermentation worked. She had set up clear containers showing kimchi at different stages. "Watch how the beneficial bacteria transform the vegetables," she said, pointing to her displays. "They create new nutrients and preserve the food naturally. This process actually makes the food healthier than it was fresh." One council member raised a hand. But isn't bacterial growth dangerous? Only if it's not controlled, Jai-yun explained. We've learned which bacteria are helpful and how to encourage them while preventing harmful ones from growing. It's like having millions of tiny helpers working for us. Hejun demonstrated his modified nutrient processor next. He had worked with the alien engineers to combine their technology with human preservation methods. This processor now creates nutrients that stay fresh 5 times longer, he announced. And this is just the beginning. We can make it even better. The aliens were clearly excited about this. Several engineers in the audience started taking detailed notes. But the biggest surprise came when Sangmei unveiled her main display. She had prepared a timeline of human food preservation, showing how each method had developed over thousands of years. These aren't just cooking methods, she explained. They're technological advances that helped humans survive and explore. Dried foods let us cross deserts. Pickled foods let us survive winter. Fermented foods kept us healthy on long sea voyages. And now these same techniques can help us in space. She showed them dried fruits that could last for years without losing nutrients. She demonstrated how smoking meat created protective layers that prevented spoilage. She explained how salt preservation had helped humans store food long before they had refrigeration. The aliens were fascinated. They had never thought of these methods as technology before. One council member even asked to examine a piece of dried fruit with their scanning device. But the most important thing, Sangmei continued, is how these methods work together. We don't just preserve food. We create new foods with new properties. Each culture on Earth has its own methods, and we learn from each other. To prove her point, she revealed her final display, foods that combine different preservation methods. There was cheese aged in smoked tea leaves, pickled vegetables fermented with special bacteria, and dried fruits preserved with beneficial molds. These foods show how we've learned to work with nature's processes, Du-hyun said, stepping forward again. Instead of fighting against bacteria and natural changes, we learn to guide them. Instead of processing all nutrients into their simplest form, we found ways to make complex foods stable and safe. He turned to face the council directly. You thought our digestive system was primitive because it can handle many different foods. But that ability is exactly what makes it advanced. We can eat fresh foods or preserved foods. We can use helpful bacteria to digest better. We can survive on many different kinds of food if we need to. That's not primitive, that's adaptation. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then Ambassador Vex stood up. Commander Du-hyun, we have seen something remarkable these past 3 days. What we thought was primitive technology is actually... He paused, seeming to search for the right words. It is actually elegant in its complexity. Another council member stood. Your preservation methods could solve many problems for Alliance worlds, and your understanding of beneficial bacteria might help us develop new medical treatments. The head of the council rose last. We must discuss what we have seen. Please wait while we consider everything you have shown us. As the council members left for their private chamber, the other aliens in the audience came down to look more closely at the displays. Many asked questions about how different preservation methods worked. Some were particularly interested in Hejun's modified processor design. I think we impressed them, Tahi said quietly to Du-hyun. They're starting to see that there's more than one way to be advanced. Do-hyun nodded. We showed them that working with nature can be more sophisticated than trying to completely control it. Now we just have to wait and see if they understood the lesson. The crew stayed by their displays, answering questions from curious aliens. Even those who still seemed nervous about human food wanted to learn about the science behind it. Hour after hour passed as they explained and demonstrated, sharing humanity's long history of food science with their alien audience. Finally, after what seemed like a very long time, the council members returned to the chamber. Everyone quickly returned to their seats. Du-hyun and his crew stood together, waiting to hear what the council had decided. The head of the council stepped forward, looking at the human crew with new respect in their large eyes. They were about to learn if humanity's primitive food science had earned them a place among the stars. The grand chamber was completely silent as the head of the council stepped forward. Commander Du-hyun could feel his heart beating fast, but he kept his face calm. Next to him, his crew stood straight and proud, waiting for the decision that would affect humanity's future. The head council member's voice filled the chamber. 3 days ago, we thought human eating habits showed that your species was too primitive for the Galactic Alliance. Today, we understand that we were wrong. What we saw as primitive was actually advanced in ways we had never considered. A wave of relief went through the human crew. Ambassador Vex stepped forward to stand beside the council leader. Your demonstration has shown us something remarkable, Vex continued. While we focused on making our digestive systems simpler, you learned to work with complexity. While we tried to control nature completely, you learned to guide it in useful ways. Both paths led to advancement, but yours might help us solve problems we haven't been able to fix. The council leader held up one of Hojun's modified nutrient processors. This simple device, created in just 2 days by combining our technology with your preservation methods, already works better than the original. Imagine what we could accomplish by working together. Jae-yun raised her hand politely. When the council leader nodded, she spoke. If I may explain, our research shows that your nutrient processors could work even better. The bacteria we use in fermentation could help break down nutrients more efficiently. You wouldn't need to process everything into its simplest form first. Yes, Tahi added. And our studies of beneficial bacteria might help your species develop new ways to absorb nutrients. You might not need to change your digestive systems, but you could make them work better. The council members looked interested. One of them asked, could your preservation methods help with space travel? Our ships can only carry enough nutrients for 30 days. Hajun stepped forward eagerly. Definitely. We can show you how to store nutrients for months or even years. Different preservation methods work better for different nutrients, but we can combine them. We could help you design new storage systems for your ships. Chef Sangmai spoke up next, and it's not just about storage. Each preservation method creates different flavors and textures. You might discover whole new ways to enjoy nutrients, not just absorb them. The aliens in the audience started talking excitedly among themselves. Some were already taking notes and making plans. The council leader raised a hand for quiet. We have made our decision, they announced. Earth will be welcomed into the Galactic Alliance, not despite your eating habits, but because of them. Your food science will be recognized as an advanced technology, and we hope you will share it with other worlds. The human crew tried to stay professional, but they couldn't help smiling. They had done it. Earth would join the alliance. But the council wasn't finished. We also request that Earth establish a special academy to teach these technologies to other species. Commander Do-hyun, would your crew be willing to stay and help start this academy? Do-hyun looked at his team. They all nodded eagerly. We would be honored, he said. The next few hours were busy as the council members made their announcement official. They called it the Earth Food Science Initiative. Soon, ships from other worlds would come to learn about preservation methods, beneficial bacteria, and natural processing techniques. Later that evening, the human crew gathered in their ship's common room to celebrate. They had set up a small feast showing off different preservation methods. Dried fruits, aged cheese, pickled vegetables, and fermented drinks. I still can't believe it, Hajun said, looking at the official alliance acceptance document. We got into the alliance because of kimchi and cheese. Tahi laughed. Not just because of the food, because we showed them a different way of thinking. They thought fighting against nature was the only way to advance. We showed them how working with nature could be even better. And now we get to teach others, Jae-yun added excitedly. Think of all the research we can do together. Every species might have different bacteria we can learn from. Different preservation methods we never thought of. Sangmai was already making plans for the Academy's teaching kitchen. We'll need to show them everything step by step, from basic preservation to advanced fermentation. Maybe we can even develop new methods that work better in space. Do-hyun watched his crew with pride. Each of them had helped change how the Alliance saw humanity, and now they would help build bridges between Earth and other worlds, one preserved food at a time. "Commander, call the voice from the ship's communicator." It was Ambassador Vex. "Could you and your crew join us? Some council members would like to try eating preserved Earth foods. Under medical supervision, of course." The crew looked at each other in surprise. This was a big step. Aliens actually wanting to try human food. "We'll be right there," Do-hyun answered. "Chef Sang-mi, what would you recommend for their first Earth food experience?" Sang-mi thought for a moment. Something simple but interesting. Maybe some mild pickled vegetables. And definitely some aged cheese. They seemed very interested in that. As they gathered supplies and headed to meet the council members, Do-hyun thought about how much had changed in just a few days. The aliens who had been horrified by human eating were now curious to try it themselves. The council that thought humans were primitive now saw them as advanced teachers. Most importantly, humanity had found its special place in the galaxy. They would help the Alliance understand that sometimes the old ways were the advanced ways. That working with nature's complexity could be better than trying to make everything simple. That what looked primitive to one species might be exactly what another species needed. When they reached the council's meeting room, they found several alien scientists had joined the council members. Everyone wanted to learn about Earth's food science. As Sang-mi carefully set out small samples of preserved foods, Do-hyun saw the future taking shape, a future where humanity's primitive eating habits would help lead the way to new discoveries among the stars. The head of the council picked up a small piece of aged cheese, studying it carefully. "To think," they said, "we almost missed all this because we thought we knew what advanced meant." Perhaps that is the biggest lesson here. That progress can take many forms, and sometimes the most advanced path is the one that works with nature instead of against it. Do-hyun nodded. That's what humanity learned over thousands of years. Now we can all learn new things together. And as the aliens carefully tried their first tastes of Earth food, a new chapter in galactic history began. All because humans had kept their primitive ways of eating and found out they weren't so primitive after all.